without further ado, I'm going to tell you to put your, if you haven't already, put your Zoom on speaker view. This will help because we have two speakers tonight, so therefore when they each speak, you will see them speaking. Ashley Stohl is a photographer based in Los Angeles and New York, and co-founder and publisher of Peanut Press, an independent photo book publisher. She was born and raised in LA. She embraced photography as an escape from the demands of being a mother, yet motherhood is an inescapable lens through which she views her subjects. She examines community as an extension of the family and believes that families and people create for themselves the families people create for themselves can be as revealing as the ones to which they were born. Sorry, I probably butchered that. Ashley has lectured at institutions including the Penumbras Foundation, Columbia University, George Washington University, SPE National. In 2015, she published her first book, Charth Vader, which became a viral sensation. Ashley now lends her experience to other photographers publishing through Peanut Press, and her second book was published in 2019 called Days and Years. We are very happy to welcome Ashley. We are also here to welcome David Carroll. David Carroll is a photographer, writer, curator, editor, teacher, lecturer, publisher, every guru, everything. He attended the School of Visual Arts and the New School for Social Research, where he studied under Lisette Model. That's extraordinary.
Ooh.
He was the first assignment photographer for the Image Bank photo agency, now part of Getty Images, at the age of 26. He recently retired after 25 plus years as the director of photography at the Outfront Media, formerly CBS Outdoor, to become the editor-in-chief of Peanut Press Books. He loves giving photographers a platform to share and discuss their work with the photographic community. David is the author of 4 monographs, 40 Miles of Bad Road, All My Lies Are True, This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things, and his latest book, No Plan B. He also completed a trilogy of books, Where's the Monkey, Here's the Deal, and All My Pictures Look the Same, with Cafe Royal Books in London. I just want to say, I want to welcome them both. They've been longtime friends. I think I met Ashley in 2009, right after I moved to Los Angeles, I think through Eileen Smithson. And I met David not long after that. And David, I want to say your claim to fame for me, I mean, you have many claims to fame, is that you brought John Maloof to the Filter Photo Festival.
Oh, I did.
So
that's right.
That was pretty exciting. But David's, yeah, they're both old friends, and we're really excited to hear what they have to say. So take it away. Thank you so much for being here.
Are we unmuted?
Are we doing this?
I was trying the old man thing.
Wait, I'm not done Instagramming a shot of this.
Okay, as time goes by. All right, Ashley, hi everybody.
Hi guys.
Everything we're gonna say is almost true. So here's how it goes. We're gonna put up a PowerPoint or a keynote.
All right.
And we're gonna do a little bit about ourselves and then a little about what we do in book publishing. And then you get to ask us questions. If that works. Ashley's the pilot on the.
I'm going to share screens.
Yeah. Oh, we can't give away the corners.
All right.
Ooh. So first, let me just say this. Isn't that a cool logo? That's all.
All right.
Again, Ashley.
We are both photographers and we make photo books. And it turns out there's no money in books.
And just so you know that it's true.
We're all still kind of driven to do it. So
Joni Sternbach gave you this shirt as she mocked us for starting a publishing company. Just so if you don't know Joni, Joni has books out and there's no money in books. So let that be said. Okay.
Yeah. All right. We'll start with introductions.
Okay. So follow with me. Remember the ball that bounced on words? Oh, right. I'm older than you, so you don't remember it. Hi, I'm David Carroll, and I'm a photographer, photographed by Eileen Smithson at Photo Eye in Santa Fe, a bookseller. So first, let me just do this. I'm going to show a few pictures. I think we've narrowed it down to like 8 or 10 each. So you just get a sense of what we take pictures of. And I just take pictures of, so I started a project in 1979 that I call Take Pictures, and I'm still working on it, but I'm almost done. Probably done in the next 15 or 20 years. And that's pretty much every one of my books, everything I do that's not related to making money in photography is what you're looking at right now. So I just take pictures as I wander about. So we can flip through these a little faster. Oh, what's the lie I'm supposed to tell about this story? Ashley, what's my spiel on the, ask me to trade? This is the #1 thing that photographers ask for, whatever that's worth. Okay. Next one. I'm going to say what you said. This is me imitating Robert Frank in my version of Robert Frank, because ultimately all I'm doing is imitating Robert Frank and Winogrand and Friedlander and everybody else who I saw when I was a kid. And by kid, I mean like a teenager. And I'm supposed to say I photographed this because it's funny. Go to the next one. And that's a sad tree. But this is actually, that one, go back one. This is actually more about me actually getting up early because I saw out my window that it was misty out. And I said, I have to get a fucking picture. Oh, can we curse on here, Sarah? No? Okay. I had to get a gosh darn picture.
You
So I
can do
drove.
whatever you want.
Oh, okay. So I was like, there's mist out. I have to take a picture. And then I found this and I really like it. But my favorite part is the little truck on the left. Okay, go to the next one. I just saw this going on in a lake and I ran for help. Go to the next one.
Didn't someone recently ask you if they were drowning?
Yeah, so this is my son bouncing on a rock at our place in Maine. You know, you sit on the deck and he would bounce up and down. And somebody said, "Oh my God, is that someone drowning?" I said, "Yes." And I continued to photograph them until the hands disappeared. And that's a different picture. I'll show that later. So
He's joking.
go on. Might be. This is a cover of my friend's book. How's that, Ashley? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is in Florida. This is Joe with a fish. We ate the fish. And by the way, when I was just still doing assignments, and this is in the 80s. Oh, 97. Oh, this is in 97. But I started in the 80s doing assignments, and I went up to the high Arctic north of Baffin Island. And I went back, I think, 8 times, almost every year, to do more photographs. And this is what it's like to photograph at 50 below zero. It fucking sucks. But you get the freshest sushi. So that's a bonus. So that's Joe holding a fish. Go on. And that's a subway girl. And I got to see a print of this once, like 30 feet wide, like a billboard hanging up in the Jacob Javits Center. And that was cool. Oh, can I just do this part? No, I'm not going to do it. Go ahead.
You want to do mine? All right, next time we're going to trade. I'm Ashley Stohl. I'm a photographer. I actually got started at Julia Dean, taking a street photo workshop. And it was so much fun. She used to be down on Venice Boardwalk and unleashed us down there. And I went down to the skateboarding where I had sort of grown up, although it didn't look like that when I was a kid. So I started photographing skateboarding down there and went to Cuba and photographed skateboarding in Cuba as well. So Cuba now looks more like Venice did in the early 80s. And I do a lot of photographing of my family because they are my captive subjects and they're interesting and funny. You know, when people say, you're going on a trip, put me in your suitcase, take me with you. He literally wanted to do that.
And I'm sure he didn't know that was a saying, by the way.
He doesn't know that's a saying. And I always say about this picture, guess which kid is not the child of a photographer? The one that smiles at a camera. And this was something I started shooting, Darth Vader, something I started shooting just kind of for fun and mostly because he was a really funny little kid and doing things like this. And this became my first book and is how we started Peanut Press. David and I were talking and I was wanting to make a book of my work and I didn't know what that meant. And I sort of thought, like, what's my grand statement on photography? And he said, you're not ready to make your grand statement, but you are doing this one thing that is a perfect little book. And it was Darth Vader. And it hadn't even occurred to me. So we decided to publish it together. And
well, what actually happened is when Ashley and I,
because it sounded official.
When Ashley and I started talking about this, she had maybe half the photos. So it wasn't like we had the pictures ready and said, let's make a book. There was a good year more of taking pictures and working on the project and figuring out ultimately what it was about. But I knew it was a good idea for somebody who's sort of in the first part of their career to make a book out of, because there was no pressure.
It wasn't over ambitious. So we said, all right, let's make a company. Let's make it up. We called it Peanut Press. And so the first thing we did was make swag, because that's the most fun thing about starting a company.
It is the fun thing.
Yeah. And this is our team.
Who is Team Peanut?
That guy. What do you do, David?
So here's how it works, very loosely, but if we're going to give each other sort of titles and job descriptions, what generally happens is we meet with photographers, we figure out if we're going to work with them, and then I take the first dab. You know, it's interesting because you have to actually talk to the photographers to find out what they think they want, what they really want, why they want it. And Ashley and I do that together because not everybody always knows what they want. And we certainly can't tell what the photographer would want until we meet with them. So we meet with them, and then generally it starts out with a photographer A will say, all right, how many pictures like do I show you? What do we do? And I say, find your 300 best pictures, and nobody has 300 best pictures. And I get that, and they learn that quickly.
Take away the rest of the talk.
Oh, okay, sorry, go on.
You do editing and sequencing. I do the design, fueled by
It makes that
coffee.
face, makes that face.
I make that face. And we work with Meridian Printing, who has printed for every major photographer and museum and gallery that you can think of. And the nice thing about printing with Meridian is that you probably have books on your shelves with books that they've printed. So when we called them, Icelander Cars about.
Well, wait, just the preface is we went to a few printers first. It wasn't just them. And to be perfectly honest, two of them fucked up what we wanted and the ideas and blah, blah, blah. And Meridian, who's owned by two guys who are hands-on in the place, you're dealing with an owner, and they knew exactly what we wanted. And
they
so,
specialize in printing photographs, which is so different than people who print text or brochures or whatever, because we as photographers care about somewhat of a mystery to people, and we don't think it needs to be a heavily guarded secret. A lot of what we do revolves around food.
that's Victoria Will and Lucas Jackson. We published Victoria's book, and Luke was a Reuters photographer. Notice how his camera's about to fall over and smash. This guy is in like war zones, and yet his camera's.
He also famously took the picture of Trump's inaugural lack of crowd.
He was the guy in the top of Washington Monument.
Yeah, he took that picture and got called out on Twitter for it. So we find people that we like to eat with and hang out with. That's Lori Nix. And
Guggenheim winner Lori Nix. I always like to say that.
Yeah, we find people we like to hang out with and whose work we love, and we convince them to let us make their books. And so the first step is to find out what we're working with and do the edit. So David, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so this is actually Ashley's first book, Darth Vader. But let me just say it as an overview, since the specifics aren't as necessarily important. Since for me, I had no training in anything I've ever done. I did go to art school, so if that's training, but I'm an art school dropout. So I had no training. So when my first book came out, like the turn of the century, I can say that. It was the turn of the century when my book came out. I kind of had to learn. And since I had a lot of friends in advertising and in printing, actually, I kind of learned on the job. So I learned this like 20 years ago. And what I learned most important was the pictures come first. I mean, that's always mattered to me more than anything else. Everything else to me is collateral. It's all collateral bullshit. Everything is, you know, fun. And I love books. Books are the greatest way, I think, to actually preserve your pictures and organize them and put them away. But at the end of the day, it's about photographs. So I want to see the person's photographs, whoever the person is. And I want to see a lot of them, because not only do I want to pick the best pictures for the book or work with them picking the best, I want to see how they look at the world and try to understand what they're doing. And that's a lot of there's a lot of psychology, sort of. I mean, I guess it's psychology. I'm even less trained in that. But there's a lot of psychology in how people take pictures and why they're taking them and blah, blah, blah. And so I want to see 300 pictures, and let's say 300. And the easiest thing to do is get them down to about 80. The hardest thing to do is organize them and get them into a sequence that makes sense in a book, while the photographer's sitting there going, this is my favorite photo. And I'm like, okay, so would you take this photograph and this would represent you in an article in the New York Times? And if they say, well, no, I say, it's not your favorite photo. So anyway, that's Lori and Kathleen, and this is probably the first edit. They had brought us these photographs. If you don't know Lori Nix's work, Kathleen and Lori and Kathleen, well, because it started as Lori and now it's both of them, they build this stuff. They build a world and they photograph it. And they're absolutely amazing. Anyway, so they brought us all these prints, and I don't want to do the reveal on what the book is about because she has about they have about 3 or 4 books out, but they've never had a book like the one we're making. And it's going to be an interesting take on what they do because none of us wanted to make another book of the same thing that they've always done. So we did a take on it. So they brought these pictures over, and of course there's food, and we ate and we talked about pictures, and we talked about the options for the book, and that's the very first part of the edit. So that's the beginning.
What's interesting is, and this is the start of the edit for David's book. What's interesting is how people edit themselves. And I think that's why David is saying we like to see a huge batch of pictures, because a lot of times we've had photographers give us a few pictures and we're like, I think there's more there. And it's interesting, not everyone, a lot of people who can take good pictures don't always know which of their pictures are the best. And
Most.
It's a different art. And I always suggest to everyone that you have someone outside of yourself edit your pictures and pull them together, because when, in my case, for instance, it's literally my children, and it's really hard to be critical and make sure the book is balanced and you're presenting your best work.
And most photographers always want more pictures in the books than are necessary.
Yeah.
And that's just, nobody knows the pictures they didn't see. And actually on this book, which was supposed to be a retrospective that Leica came to me to do, a retrospective of my work, which really what Tom Smith was saying to me is, you're kind of old and maybe it's time you put a book together a show, it wasn't even a book, of like what you've done over the last 25 years. So when I was editing myself, it was relatively easy because I've had so many other books. I just kind of did the best ofs. But even here, when you look at this, there's 2 rectangles that I wrote words on because I didn't make little prints. Oh, by the way, that's what we do. And I do. We make prints that are 4x6 because I need to see prints. And some of my best friends who are amazing photographers, some of the best photographers in the world, we've all agreed on this pretty much, that this is the way to do it. And I've been to people's houses. I've been to Jason Ashkenazi's house. It's one of the greatest photographers on the planet. And it's magnets and walls and metal and sticking stuff on the wall and pull them down.
And like 4x6 prints from Costco or Walgreens.
Yeah, it's cheap, the cheapest shit you can get, because really it's not about the best. We're not listening to a first pressing of an album. We're listening to it on our phones, trying to figure out, is that a tune and that's really what's going on. And so this is Grace Weston's book. And again, this is 4 years later. I edit exactly the same way. We go through a bunch of pictures. She makes me prints, or no, she made them. And then she sends them to me and my job is to edit them. So, and put them in an order.
So once we have the edit, once we know what pictures are going into it, we start proofing. And there's the proofing that we do and the proofing that Meridian, our printing house, does. And this is sort of the beginning of making sure we like the contrast and how it's
This is called the pre-press. Before you go to press, this is the pre-press. When you hear the word pre-press is all the shit you do before you go to press. And 99% of that is to get the image looking great on a proof, so that when you actually go on press, there's less work to do.
To sort of replicate what it's going to look like on the press. Because when you're doing offset printing, for instance, it's a huge machine that takes a ton of money and time and people to start up. So you do your best to replicate it digitally.
It's very expensive to run this machine.
Instance, this was printing Darth Vader, and these are digital
notes
prints, but giving us an idea of what the images are going to look like. And you can see, you just write on them. We cut one, add a little more contrast, open this part, open that part. This is where you make it's
go to the next picture. It's a better example.
Print. Here you go. It's as involved as making a print in the darkroom. You're doing all the same work.
And to that point, I obviously, I went to art school and I printed for the first 10 years of my career. So everything in printing, can be translated from the darkroom, not in the process, and that's why you have to hire a great place like Meridian, but it certainly translates in the visuals. Like, why is this not coming out in the front? Like Sarah's the one, it's her daughter on the left where it says open. Why isn't she standing out, or why is she falling back? And why is, why is everything doing what it's doing? And it's just like a darkroom. There's a famous Dennis Stock photo of James Dean that's all marked up that everybody's probably seen in books about printing. And here's Victoria going over her book. And this was a real challenge because she came to us, like 2 years before this was done, or a year and a half, wanting to do this, but we had to figure out how to make tin. So she shot tintypes of the Sundance Film Festival for a couple of years in a row. Tintype, are they tintypes? Yeah, they're tintypes.
They're tintypes.
And we had to make them look like tintypes, not like offset printing. So that was a big challenge.
We looked at every tintype book we could get our hands on. It turns out people always print them as grayscale images. And
we didn't want to
wanted
do that.
to have a little bit of that feeling of being an object and being a little metallic and kind of tactile without like going overboard and being hokey and gimmicky. And we happened to be printing other books at Meridian.
I don't think we should say this part.
Oh, we got an idea.
Yeah.
And we ended up doing a 4-color process to print these black and white
No,
images.
6-color. We did 6-color.
Because we added a
color.
little metallic in it. So there's a very subtle metallic shade.
We had to add blue because tintypes have blue in the corners, sometimes from a weird part of the process that I don't know enough about. You can refer to Penumbra Foundation. And we had to add a metallic flake to get the sort of sheen when you tip it. And it was expensive and it took a long time, but we figured it out. And actually the book was nominated for a Lucy Award for Best Book of the Year, because a lot of people like freaked out at the process. But Meridian, I don't think we could have done it with somebody at the level of Meridian also, because they understood that it had to be a certain way and they didn't give up. Yeah. Here's Richard Bram and food.
And a cheese
and
platter.
Joe, that's Joe, the guy who held the fish in the picture. And so, yeah, cheese platter. Yeah, so we're working on Bram's book. And Richard, this was a career book for him. It started out, and then it became a book about New York because his career was too big to make in a book. So we did New York, and now he lives in London. So maybe he makes a London book. I don't know. But that's part of our job too, to say, this is not your tome. This is not like Cartier-Bresson, everything that I've ever done, and it weighs 18 pounds. This is what you did in New York over the last X amount of years. And does that make sense as a book? And is it more cohesive? And and our job is also to make the photographer look even better. And the way you make people look better is by editing and refining and editing and making it as small as possible and as simple as possible till it can't be simplified or refined anymore. And that's a stronger group of pictures in my mind. And we knew we got the edit right when his wife wrote to him and said, Richard, this is done. They did a great job. Stop.
But this is a good example for anyone who's wondering about making their own book. My sister-in-law is an author, and she has said there is no sitting down to write the great American novel. Like you write and you write and you write, and maybe something you write turns into the great American novel, or maybe it doesn't, but you can't take that much on purposefully. And I think that's the way we approached Charth Vader, and that's the way we approached the book for Richard. He was wanting to sort of compile his entire career. And we said, let's do this one cohesive thing. Like, when you're dead, let the Met make the 3-inch book about your
and
career.
By the way, the way
you've ever done.
The way we figured this out was by looking at over 300 pictures. Because until I saw London and Paris and every place he'd been, I didn't realize there was maybe a smarter book at the time for him to make about New York. So, but I would never have known that if he brought me 60 pictures from around the world and I had to look at those and make them into a book.
Right.
So, that's part of like, and by the way, this is how Ashley and I work. I don't know if other people work this way. And it sort of doesn't even matter to me how other people work. Yeah. Here's another photographer from Thailand, Rami Narula. From Bangkok, who I was working with for a while before he wanted to make a book. He actually flew to New York just when we were starting Peanut Press and sort of said, can we make a book? And so we worked on a project that was kind of like Charth Vader in the sense that it was one place he photographed every day for like a couple of years. I mean, I don't know his spiel, her story about everything, because I kind of don't remember it, but it was one idea, one place, and it made a fantastic book. And he's been selling, the book sold great. By the way,
So
Richard's book sold great too.
we're heading into, so that's the editing process. We're heading into design now, and they overlap a little. And this to me is an interesting visualization of that, because in proofing all of Rami's images, so I do the design and we work on that sort of alongside the editing. So we all agree on what the book is going to be and what the feeling of it is going to be. And you can get that across in so many ways, in the font, in the colors you use, you know, the layout of the pictures. And this book, because it's dark and shadowy, I had always thought it was going to be black, and we got this big proof sheet. And I realized, oh, there's this blue tone going through everything. And
Which,
that
by the way, when you have a book planned
changed
out,
the
it's a
color of
big
the book.
epiphany.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, stop. We got to do this over.
Design is a lot of like working with a photographer and also eating and lying in bed on the laptop with the dog and picking out colors, which is fun. Honestly, to me, this is the most fun part.
Yeah, that's
Picking
why I
out the
edit and
foil
she
stamps.
designs.
Yes.
Because I don't get it.
And so what's interesting is that we get to try things out with the designs. So for instance, for Darth Vader, we knew we were going to use black linen as a cover, something I will probably never do again because it picks up lint like crazy. And they made us these covers. These are just empty covers.
They're boards with fabric on them.
And we got to try different foil stampings for the letters. So they debossed the words and they used foil to make the color. And this is one of those times of I thought I was going to do one thing. I thought I knew which one I wanted, which was like the bright silver that where you see on the spine. And we ended up doing a clear. So it was a little more subtle, a little more low key. It went with the book.
And by the way, we do this with every book, and we're almost always surprised.
Yes. And once you've proofed everything, the printer sends you like a digital proof showing you your basically your book cut to size in order. You sign off on that. And then you take a train to Meridian in Rhode Island, and sometimes the train breaks down near a nuclear reactor for like 3 hours and everyone just drinks a lot. And then you get to Meridian with the big ass press. These are actually the plates. So this is what picks up the ink and lays it on the paper.
For each color has their own thing, so it's.
And what's incredible and nerve-wracking for every photographer that we've worked with, including ourselves, maybe not David, but me for sure, is when you show up early in the morning and your work is up on the computer and they've run a sheet for you to proof, and you see like what all these months of proofing and design and editing and all that lead to. And the great thing about Meridian is that when you get there, the first thing they show you is amazing. But you're still able to make some changes on the press. So if you see the thing right in front of Paris that almost looks like piano keys, that's where you can change the ink on the press. So you can say, I want this one more contrast, let's add black to this one.
There's that many variables. And by the way, in full disclosure, I don't usually go first thing in the morning. She does. Like, I don't need to be there as soon as the press starts. So
David has an involved morning skincare routine.
That's what
that prevents him from getting up early.
Coffee and pillows.
So the process that goes all day is that they print a sheet.
At least one day.
And then everyone stands around and looks at it. And this is.
Well, wait, so what they do is, no, go back one. So we're going around here. So now we're looking at it. We're going to analyze what's happened. And now the production manager, the person in charge, in this case, it's Joe, goes, you know what? I want to change this a little bit and that a little bit. And that takes some time. So while that's going on, we go into the room.
They make the changes on the computer. And while they're printing another sheet, and the sheet has to dry for a minute. It doesn't take long to print the sheet, but it has to dry for a minute. So you can
now we're using ultraviolet, yeah.
Yes. And then we go wait in the Meridian conference room, which is better than any other print shop conference room because it is full of photo books.
On the
And
left is Richard Avedon sent him that thank you letter for that John Lennon. It was an Avedon book, and he sent him. So they've got everybody from free. I mean, it's amazing who they have there.
yeah, and we've actually gotten ideas from other books by looking in
yeah.
there. When we were printing Charth Vader, I was looking at an Irving Penn book, and I asked them, like, could I use this end paper instead of the one I picked out? And they were like, sure. It's a great way to see all these techniques and design ideas and everything that they do in person. And then, you know, they print out another sheet for you with your corrections, and you go and you look at it again, make sure you like it. You check it really close. That's my son's little face. You throw away the sheets you don't like, and then you sign off. And then they print the, you know, all the sheets they're going to need of this one, and then you do it again. And it goes, you know, all day for 2 days, whatever. By the end of the day, you kind of can't see anymore, and start taking selfies. We went, one time we were printing a book for Richard Braham and Rami Narula, but Rami couldn't be there, or could he? And then this is a stack of sheets that they printed before we went on to the next one. They sit there and cure for a couple days. And once everything's printed, they send you what's called an F&G, which stands for folded and gathered, where they take all your sheets and fold them and cut them and put them together the way they're supposed to be in a book, so you can make sure that there isn't a picture upside down, something on the wrong page, and this is your final sign off on the pages of your book. It's terrifying.
That's where Ashley goes home and gets scared.
That's where I made David look at my book before I looked at my book, because I was convinced something was going to be horribly wrong. And then you're delivered a big pallet of books.
We do
And
our own distribution, so we get everything shipped to California, and then we start.
Right here.
What? Oh, yes,
And
you.
distribution. And then you have the wonderful problem of having to get rid of your book. We like having book signings.
You remember, I just want to point something out. Go back a picture. We went from feeding Victoria to showering and taking care of her in LA, if you notice. It's a full process from fed to like, here, please come sign books.
To getting Glam Squad together.
It's true.
Charlie, even you can see in the lower right, Charlie pretty much learned to write his name by signing the books. He didn't always get it right, but mostly.
Those are the valuable books.
Yes. And then a wonderful thing that comes from having a book. So I know a lot of people think, okay, you're going to put this money into making a book, and then you're going to get it back from selling the book. But what happens is so much bigger. A lot of times you get a show from a book, or you make a book for a show. You get talks, people buy prints. You can
get work.
Yeah, you can get work. So what are we doing next? We're doing more of the thing we love, which is making books for amazing photographers that we think are awesome people. David, do you want to talk about this series?
Well, let me say this. This is 9 photographers. This is, first thing is, don't ever be so confident you think, if I can make one book, I can make 9 at the same time. It doesn't exactly work that way. But it did work that way, and we did it. We just didn't know about a pandemic jumping up in the middle. But so these are 9 photographers who we've become friends with, who are great photographers, and you may know some of their names, you may not, but we're doing them all at the same time. We're doing them all in a similar style. I mean, almost sort of the same style, and we're debating how to release them all. And it's going to be an interesting project of great photography, I think. And a lot of the photographers we work with, we like to work with people for their first book. Now, it's not everybody's. I mean, Greta Pratt's had a few books from Stohl. Lori Nix and Kathleen have had books. But pretty much we like to work with people. Don Hudson had a book that came out in France. But we like doing this. So, and that's it. We're working on these 9 books. We tried to do more women than men. I think we have 6 women, 3 men, right?
So these books are actually going to all come with a print. And what's cool about that is that some of these people's prints are,
You can't, they're so
let's say,
expensive.
not easy to collect financially. So this is an inexpensive way to collect someone's work, and also get a book that has, you know, kind of the project that this came from. So some more context. And I think they're going to be great.
It looks great. We've already sort of seen, they're going to come out in November. We've already sort of seen it all. I mean, it's been proofed. Now it's just some final stuff before we print them, and it looks great. So that's exciting. What else is there, Ashley, before we answer questions?
Before we answer questions. I hope
Oh,
everyone's ready.
these guys. Anybody who thinks this is offensive, you can turn off your thing now. I'll give you back your $10. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Biden-Harris, yay. All right, go on.
Wait, how do I undo this? Oh, stop.
No, you're
Anyway.
the technical maven.
Anyway, that's the basics of making books, but we love answering questions. So I don't know, Sarah, do you want to moderate the questions? Do you want us to just go through any questions?
Up to you. We have a couple of questions already, and if anybody, you know, now is the time to sort of jump in there and write questions in the chat. Somebody wrote, is there an optimum size for a photo book? Roughly how many photos, how many pages? And I think you covered, but did you compare a lot of printers or immediately went to Meridian Press because of their great history?
Okay, so
Those are
Go
two
ahead,
great
Ashley.
questions. And
Yeah.
everyone on the size for a book, everyone has, this is a personal preference, but David and I have a strong opinion about this. We don't like books that are too big in size because it becomes unwieldy. Like it's when turning the pages of the book is an ordeal, you're distracted from looking at the pictures. You really just want to get intimate with the pictures. And I think a lot of pictures have their size where they come across the best. And in relation to the size of the book. And David, do you want to talk about how many images in a book?
okay, I mean, I can say, here's how I feel. And some of my best friends disagree with me, so it's not right, it's just my opinion. And I said it earlier, I want to see as few pictures and get your point. That's what I want to see is the least amount of pictures and get your point. Because the worst thing in the world for me is a book that when you're about halfway through, you start going, how much longer is this? Or you don't finish it. And I don't want any of our books to end up where you're like looking at the 14th picture going, you know, so I have I mean, I believe, and I know people disagree with me. I mean, you know, but I think anywhere from 32 to 50 is a good amount of pictures for a book, depending upon if it's one subject or if it's, Sarah, how many pictures are in your book?
24.
Smart.
See?
So,
You can
and
have a
by the
book with
way,
24 pictures. And by the way, every single one of them is amazing. And that is what we came down to for Charth Vader for our first book. I had about 18 pictures and I had to get, you know, a handful more. I think we ended up with 28. But I had this thing of, I wanted to be able to show a photographer that I respect or someone in the industry. I wanted to be able to hold up any one of those pictures and stand by it and say, this represents me as a photographer.
we both think that, so
we
it's
both
hard to make a
don't-
book with 90 pictures like that.
We don't love filler. I think there are a lot of books that have pictures in there that aren't really about the photograph, and we are both sort of single image people. So when I look at those, I think, oh, right, there's clearly something I don't understand.
And by the
here.
way, there's a place for that. It's like an editorial story in the New York Times might need pictures to move the story along. You know, but I'm not an editor of a magazine. What was the other part of the question?
The other part was, did we look at other printers or did we go straight to Meridian? We talked to a couple other printers, but they were the ones that spoke our language. Like they understood how to work with a photographer.
We actually had issues with 2 other people. They wouldn't send us what we wanted. Do you remember that?
All I wanted
It
was paper samples, honestly.
Yeah, paper fucking samples. Like, and it was like, Meridian couldn't have been easier. And by the way, I think we always wanted to work with Meridian. We were just a little scared because they're such a big deal that we thought, can we just do this? And then, of course, as Bob, who owns the company, always says, why do people think they can't come to us to print stuff? Yes, we want to print your stuff.
We've had people say that to us, like, how did you get in with them? Like, I don't know, you just call them. Like
Yeah, you pay your
they're a
bills.
company. They want work. They are not the cheapest. I know a lot of people like to print in China. That's a thing. To
It would
us,
cost us more money to go on press in China.
yeah.
And if something went wrong, and I know people, well-known people, big-time people, who are still furious about books that got fucked up in China. You don't hear as much from Italy, but I've heard it from China.
For us, it's really important to be on press when we're making the book. They're in the printing plant looking at what's coming off of the press, and we love, if at all possible, for the photographer to be there. So they're making the final decisions about how their work looks, because we are all photographers and we are all really picky and have an idea of what we want these photographs to look like. When you
The Meridian
factor,
is a no-brainer.
but when you factor in flying to China and or Italy or any of those things, that starts to seem
Although
daunting.
Italy sounds like a fun trip.
So for us, even though Providence, Rhode Island does not have any good food, we are going to.
I can disagree with that and send you somewhere, but
Oh my God, please send us.
We've heard that 100
I haven't found
times.
anything good.
Okay, what's the next question?
So somebody asked about color, and I think the question is really, what's the difference in working on a book in black and white and in color?
Well, for me as an editor or something, there's no difference.
No, well, I think everything, printing, editing.
We do work in color. We have Rami Narulla's book, Richard Brand books, Paris Vizzoni's book is in color.
No, I think there is. So the difference really is the process is slightly different. I actually think color's easier to make, because when you see someone's skin tone, it's either right or wrong on some level. I mean, but you're still controlling contrast and you're still controlling all these other density. But black and white, if you're a black and white photographer, you probably know what you're looking for, and sometimes it's a little harder to get there than it is with color. But it's the same thing.
We've had a funny thing working on this latest series of 9 books and proofing with each photographer. It's interesting to note, I think David has said when it's a self-portrait, because we have 2 self-portrait projects in here, people are much more picky, because you can look at, like, say, a photograph of a person on a street. You don't know them. You don't know that their skin is a little more olive tone, but you know
don't care.
your own self. Yeah. And it's much more difficult to proof your skin tone when the picture is of you.
I mean, Jennifer McClure and Andy Schreiber are both books about themselves in color. And I know that they don't want to look like the wrong color. And so that's a little bit of a thing to work on. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've learned that in this process.
Mm-hmm.
So you had another question, I think, David, this is for you. When you ask to see 300 pictures, is it a best of, or is it just all one project?
Well, it would depend on the person, but I would say 300 pictures, and you get 2 kinds of people from that. Oh my God, 300 pictures, that's a lot. Or, oh, only 300 pictures? And that tells you a lot about what's going on at their editing skills. I think when I say a lot of pictures like that, let's just say it's the same subject. Let's say it was Darth Vader. Well, 300 pictures, you're going to get repetitious. You're going to dilute other pictures. You want to have the strong, like, you don't want to have 9 pictures of a thing going on. Like in Rami's book, it's this train station. You don't want to have 8 pictures at the same time in the morning with the same light, and they're all good, but they'll dilute each other. So you want to find the fewest amounts. It's like curating a show. You know, you never have bad pictures, but you don't always have all the good pictures, because you can't. So
right. It's also a good way to see how this person edits themselves. If they come to you with 50 pictures, are these their 50 best? Or a lot of photographers don't realize what they're really brilliant at. It's not necessarily the thing they intend to do or think that they do.
I mean, at this point, I've edited a lot of photographers in my life, and the ones that are great at it stand out. And I'll say, like, Greta Pratt, whose book we're doing now, she knows her shit inside out. She knows what it is, and it's good. And then that's great. You know, I mean, for me,
her project is called 19 Lincolns. Like, there was no.
Yeah, but I'm sure there were more than 19 initially. I'm sure there was hundreds. But the point is, there's certain people who just, like, boom, they hit you with the number. You edit them and sequence them, but they're there. And then there's people who just shoot a lot of photographs, and that's fine. You know, at the end of the day, Cartier-Bresson, I'll say that name again, has what, 40 great pictures? Taking pictures for 50 years. And, you know, Gary Winogrand
Yeah,
had
if you get
10,000
to
great
your
pictures. So
career-
it depends on the,
If you
what?
get to your career with 40 great pictures, you're doing well.
Yeah, you're doing really good.
Um,
Okay, so somebody asked just privately, and I think they probably meant it too, which is about distribution. So you all said that you do book signings, online sales. What other channels do you use, and how has that helped or hurt you to have
Ashley, we're
no
going to be honest
distribution?
what are we going to be?
I
honest?
would rather sell the books ourselves and get all the money and give the photographers more than
Mm.
send them to bookstores until we have to.
Here's
And
the
so
deal. Bookstores take a big chunk. So it costs a lot to print a book. This is not, remember our first slide, this is not a money-making operation. So if you send them to bookstores, they're taking a cut. Now there's a time and place to do this. We do sort of small batch books. We do
750,
500,
1,000.
750 to 1,500. So we really want the photographer to be making money back on those books rather than giving it to bookstores. And a bookstore can be a way of getting some distribution or some exposure in a place that you can't really reach, but heavily on social media. We've done really well doing it that way and selling it.
You know what the key is, I think? If you can get press. Victoria Will got a shitload of press. When No Plan B came out, I got a shitload of press. The quicker the books go, you may sell 10 at a time or 20, but the next thing you know, 500 have sold and you're like, oh, I'm going to keep the rest. And that's another thing. You want to keep a lot of the books for yourself. I haven't talked to you about this, Sarah, but if I was you, I'd keep at least 200 or 300 because you're young and you're going to be giving these things away for a long time to a lot of curators. And I wouldn't want to sell them all because, you know, $40 100 times, maybe $4,000 today. But in 5 years, you're like, fuck, I would buy those books for $75 each if I could, you know, to give them away. And I made that mistake on my very first book. So I know that in a lot of ways, it's more valuable to have the books. But social media and following is a lot of it, and press. And distribution is expensive too.
Yeah.
Distributors take so much of, you can't even make money distributing. You should hear the horror shows of people selling books through distributors in Europe and getting a check for $118 if they sold, you know, 500 books. It's just not good.
But this also brings us to something we talk about with every photographer when we're figuring out how many to print, which has to do with sort of the reach of your project, you know, what it's about, how universal it is. Is it something that just photographers will want to buy? Does it have some crossover? But we believe that you need to factor in at least 200 books to hold back, because once you sell out your edition, you have no books. And the greatest thing is, you know, I met a gallerist who said, I want to try selling some of your prints in my gallery. And I said, all right, which ones do you want me to send you? And she said, I don't know. And I said, let me give you my book. And which led to print sales.
And by the way, she made more in sales from that show than she'd make in selling like 100 books. So, you know, it actually has a lot of value.
Yeah, it's a great calling card. And also just to thank people in the industry. I mean, we know nothing in our industry happens right away, but a lot of what these photo festivals and reviews are about making connections. So maybe someone will think of you later when they're, say, curating a show or wanting to do something new in their gallery. It's really great to be able to give them your book. So you do want to hold some back.
So I guess the answer to the question is we'd rather sell them ourselves. And if the book doesn't sell, then we figure it out from there. So far, we're either lucky or we have good judgment or the photographers are popular and good. But so far, this is not an issue. And I don't even look for wood to knock on. What do you think of that?
So the next question was, do you reach out to the photographers you want to work with, or do the photographers come to you?
Both.
Both. We are really interested.
We know a lot of people. So you can, it's like not that hard for us to find. I mean, I don't say that in an arrogant way. I just, you know, I know a lot of photographers. So, and we have a very specific sort of thing we like to publish. So, yeah.
Yeah, we really like, you know, part of the thing of making our book was that we had so much fun doing it. And it was kind of like we want our friends to have the same positive experience, because we've seen friends make books. We've seen them have good experiences. We've seen them have bad experiences. We've seen them be happy with their book and the results. We've seen them not be happy with the results. And we want to have a good time doing this. I mean, this is
We're
It's
committing a
supposed to be
year,
fun.
sometimes more,
You're
2
making a
years.
book. It's super exciting and it's a huge investment and it's a huge amount of time and trust.
You don't want to spend a year or two with somebody you don't want to hang out with.
Yeah, so we really like to make sure that we're working with people that we will have a good working relationship with, that will trust us in what we're good at, that will trust us to help them create the book that they want and that represents their work.
We've also both been on the side of like the importance of your book being right because it lasts forever.
Yeah.
Somebody asked about what are the relative final costs involved in making a book?
It's all over
It's
the
always
place.
that question.
Well, but I think it's
Well, can you
I
give us a
understand the question.
ballpark of what it would cost? Well, I don't know. I mean, yeah.
It's a weird question, right? Like, I'll tell you this, if you make 500 books or you make 1,000 books, if you make 500 books, the next 500 will be really cheap compared to the first 500. So there's a lot of variables, but listen, if you print a book in China and send them everything, you probably do it for 12 grand, like a medium-sized book with 50 pictures in it. And if you do it in the United States, it'll cost a lot more. But if you do it digitally, it'll be cheaper. If you do it with a shitty like paperback cover, it's cheaper. But that kind of thing, I get why that's an important question.
There's no one cost because it's like saying, what does a car cost? Like a car can cost $1,200, a car can cost $100,000.
I guess a range. I mean, do you have sort of what is?
I think, all right, I'll say this. You can make a book, a medium-sized book, let's say 8 by 11, with 35 pictures in it, printed digitally. Let's say digitally because it's much cheaper. And let's say you're going to run 200 of them. You can make it anywhere from 6 to 12 grand. I think that can be done.
So
Now that's assuming you're doing your own editing, you're doing your own design, you're doing a lot of stuff yourself probably, because I don't know what designers cost, but I've heard numbers like 7,500 to design a book or 10,000. So, I mean, it depends on a lot of variables. We're a
and
one-stop
I don't
shop,
know,
so that's
I don't
different.
know how much people know about the different kinds of printing. So you can print digitally, which is great for smaller runs. So if you're printing digitally, you want to make 100 books. That's like digital is perfect for that.
I'm going to do, by the way, what is it called? The Witches, where they walk through the woods with the camera bouncing.
Blair Witch.
I'm going to do
Oh,
Blair
you
Witch Project to
looking
move to another room.
David's been kicked out of his room. So if you're doing offset, which is those big printing presses, there's sort of a minimum that you can do in offset because it takes so much manpower and time, and they have to ink up the press, that it's not worth doing less than 500 books. So that is one factor to consider. Digital is much cheaper and you're printing fewer of them. Now, we haven't loved digital printing in the past. The 9 books that we're doing now will be printed digitally because they're small. It's small.
Well, no, because Meridian does a great job.
And we were able to do this project because they have, in our opinion, mastered really good quality digital printing. So like David said, it depends on what format you choose. If you decide to print 100 books digitally or 750 through offset. Now, offset presses print really fast. So printing 500 books to 750, the jump is not the big difference. The difference is like, are you doing digital versus offset? And then how elaborate is the binding? Is it paperback or hardback? Does it have a tipped in image? Is it foil stamped? Like everything that's another layer of complication is more money.
You can make a $20,000 book into $40,000 with like 3 decisions.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that simple. You decide you want to fold out
So,
and
sorry
you
if
want
that
tipped
all
in.
sounds like evasive, but it's impossible to say.
Well, books cost different amounts of money to make.
Yeah, yeah.
And you guys have answered this last summer, but I'm going to ask it again because people are asking it, who pays for the book?
All right, good question.
Is
So
it-
these days, sadly,
Everybody wants to know.
I know, because everyone wants Stohl
Well, let's
to
be
come
heroes.
and bless you with we will pay for your book. But that is not feasible for most printing companies. So we've had different arrangements with different photographers. There are photographers whose books we really wanted to help get out there, and we've contributed to that along with the photographer. We've had photographers pay for their book. You know, there's There's a million ways to do
Have
it.
we had anybody pay for their whole book? We have not.
I think we have.
Okay.
I don't know. But we, a lot of people use crowdfunding. We at Peanut don't. Partially because we've been burned too many times and like not getting your print from a crowdfunding thing or whatever. We also don't want to take money from people that don't have it. So we're not doing this to make money. We're doing this because we're photographers and we want to help other photographers make.
What are we
a great
doing with
book.
our 9 books that are coming out?
9 books that are coming out, yeah.
What are we doing?
Go ahead and talk about it.
They're not paying anything. We're paying them. We're giving them books, and we're taking the risk, and we're going to go for it.
Yeah, because it's printed digitally.
Because we think it's going to
That's one
work
reason.
too.
Yeah, we can afford to take on these books, and so for this series, we are not asking the photographers for a dime, which actually feels really good because as photographers, we know what it's like when you get kind of nickeled and dimed everywhere. You have galleries who want you to print and frame and ship, and there are not a lot of places willing to.
Let's just say we really hope this works on these 9 books.
But we're doing it because we believe in all of the work, and we believe in.
Yes, but I hope that we sell them too. Let's be honest.
I'll knock on wood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody said about the physical size of the book. Now I was going to say, so from having just looked at your website and everything in your books, they all seem to be about the same size. And is that, or the question is, what are the factors involved in the decision of the size of the book?
They're somewhat different. Like I have Paris Fazzoni's book here that's maybe 9 by 12 or something.
Victoria's book.
Victoria's book is smaller. It's, I know, David.
Well, actually, okay, so Victoria's book, we wanted something that was like a small little treasure. We thought it was like a little, the tintype originals were 4 by 5, and we wanted the book to have that feeling of a precious little thing, and that was considered when we made the size of the book.
So these are.
That's the actual size of the tintype on the cover.
Are they? Yes.
Yeah, that's 4 by 5.
The size of an actual tintype.
That
They're
she shot.
slightly enlarged inside the book. But so then you start to think about things like how much white space is around them, how do
But
they
we
stay
sat
up?
down and that was a decision that it was going to be a small little precious thing, not a big heavy tome,
Right. And the interesting thing is that with every image, and I'm sure every photographer here knows that you print your images at different sizes and it feels different. And that's kind of part of the design process, is finding out what, like for Darth Vader, that was the original thing, was that this was like a little precious jewel like him. And so it's a small book. I think these are printed like.
It would have been vulgar if it was big. It
3
wouldn't
by
make
5.
sense.
You don't need a big mural of this. Like you need to feel small and intimate and be drawn in. But then for Paris's book, like they're these big, funny, colorful worlds.
They have to be more in your face.
And a little more in your face. And you want to be.
And also there is a cost factor in this, because if this book was like twice as big, it would be a lot more money.
Yes.
So, you have to draw the line
But it also
somewhere.
just comes down to, and Joe is asking, is there a peanut press style? It's just whatever we prefer. We happen to prefer slightly smaller books. Like that's just our preference. I mean, this company, like there's no right and wrong.
I mean, it's not like I don't collect big ass fucking books. I mean, they're all over the house, but it's like, I think the stuff that we make makes more sense. Most of them are smaller. I mean, you all know the Atje set that weighs 300 pounds that's right behind me. Oh no, that's actually August Sander. So I have sets of books like all of August Sander and all of Atje and all this stuff. They weigh like 80 pounds. And I honestly almost never look at the books because they're so big.
Because you can't like sit in bed and like flip through that book.
So
somebody said, have you ever made blurb type books just as a proof of concept? But you guys go to Meridian for that. You get sort of a little dummy book basically made.
Yeah, or I make.
no, we make them at home.
A little book.
Meridian
dummy
doesn't
at
do
home.
that. Meridian makes covers, but they don't make a dummy book.
Here's our thing with blurb. A lot of people.
They just had the blurb guy here before. Remember that?
Yeah, this is
Okay.
nothing against blurb. But the way we work, so sometimes people come to us and say, I've made this blurb book, sold it to my friends and family, will you publish it? And the problem is you've already used up like your captive audience that are
Your
for
50
sure going to
people.
buy your book. So we kind of have a policy of like, don't make a small edition and then think you're going to make another edition, because don't make those people buy it twice.
And also, I don't want to make a book that somebody already made and they think it looks this way. I want to see
Right.
pictures, and Ashley and I'll figure out what it looks like, and then you tell us if you like it. But I don't want a book that's already made, because then whatever the person does, they already remember the old book. It's like, well, this doesn't look like the first book, and maybe it's better and maybe it's not, but I don't even want to be involved. I don't know. That's how
But you've
we've
watered
said
down
no to
your-
very big deal photographers who made blurb books, and we said, no, you already did that.
Yeah,
I
and
think
then
this person was just asking about just
No,
for-
I'm just saying for us,
like a
this is,
proof concept, just like a one-off, or you bring it to a portfolio, just a single.
no, I
image,
get
not
that,
a-
but yeah.
blurb books
Oh,
are
if you
not.
did that, that doesn't disqualify you.
Now, let me say this about portfolio reviews. We are, because we are book designers and bookmakers, we are happy for you to just bring us pictures. Like we
Yeah, I
can
just need
picture what the
pictures.
book needs to be. You don't have to bring it to us in a book form. A lot of people feel like they
Hey,
need to
Joe.
present us with something that looks like a book. And you don't, just show us pictures. We know if it
Right.
it
if it's gonna be
means a book to us. Yeah, it's a lot of effort, and people put a lot of money into that stuff, and I think it's not necessary.
So somebody said, going to Meridian, making a run of 600 books, how much without design editing costs? I will answer this question just because I actually, when I was thinking about making my book, I went to Meridian and said, how much? I literally just sent them like this,
Mhm.
if I do a 6
Yeah,
by 9
they'll
book,
tell you.
just me
They'll give
pictures.
you an
They
estimate.
sent me back an estimate. So I will just say
Yeah.
to anybody who's interested in making a book with Meridian, you can send them a request
They
and they'll
couldn't be
send
nicer about it.
they'll send you an estimate. So yeah.
Yeah.
Is Damiani cheaper?
And
Damiani was about the same. That's so interesting you say, but
Yeah.
anyway, I should.
Yeah, but that's a great printer, so.
It's a
I
great.
think
And they
Michael
have
is
distribution,
asking,
which, there's the thing about distribution. So, but then your book gets discounted on Amazon. But
Oh, you know.
anyway, I will say I do know.
Love, like,
Michael
I
was
remember
asking
a
about
friend of mine.
Michael was asking about purchasing the Tin Type book by Victoria Well. It's on our website, peanutpressbooks.com.
I just put it in the chat for anybody who's interested
It
in
gets,
purchasing any of
it
these
gets
books that you talked
distributed
about tonight.
from my messy desk right here.
Ashley will distribute it for you. Several people said, thank you so much. I had to leave for another class. Somebody said, in the old days when one had a book, you knew that they were someone because a publishing company paid to have it done. Now people seem to either pay for it themselves or raise money to pay for it.
Oh,
So
let me answer
That
that.
is
is it
true.
just people with money who can get a book?
No. Wait,
There's the
first of
question.
all, complete bullshit. Every Freelander book from the 60s, he published himself in Haywire Press. And, I mean, I'm not going to even get into it, but a lot of photographers publish their own books.
Right.
Total bullshit. Ralph Gibson. I mean, Larry Clark's book. It was all published. Don't believe that McGraw-Hill was publishing photo books left and right. And that doesn't make you someone just because they're willing to do that. Listen, Ansel Adams is a really important photographer, and he has a lot of pictures that make beautiful posters. But, I like Ansel Adams. But sure, they'll take a chance on that. It's bullshit. The best photographers you can think of didn't have somebody doing it. And the illusion, by the way, like when MoMA was publishing those books in the 60s and 70s,
Mhm.
I mean, we're not going to say it was John's friends, but we know what the fuck it was, please.
There's no
And you know it
illusion,
too,
basically.
Sarah.
I know. Well, I think that's all the questions we have. I just want to thank you both so much for this really enlightening conversation. Both Ashley and David are on social media, as is Peanut Press, so you could reach out and ask them more questions. They're very, they will answer them. I did want to, for 2 seconds, if anybody wants to stay on, we do have Jeff Phillips, who is going to be giving the photo book discussion on October 15th on zines. And since a lot of people don't know what zines are, if you want to hear, he's going to give us a little pitch for October 15th.
I want to see Jeff.
He's
here,
right
David.
there.
Yeah, we go way back. David's for everybody here, so many faces. I'm part of the Filter Photo organization in Chicago, which of course Sarah founded 12 years ago. And back when we had LACP funding, or as a donor, sponsor, David, would come and do these amazing photo walks in Chicago for our festival every year. So it's kind of a reunion in a sense. And
It
of
was
course, I love
fun.
Darth Charth Vader work, so that's amazing too. So anyway, my 30-second pitch for next month really is, I've been really obsessed with making photo zines for the last 4 or 5 years because I realized what an amazing medium they are and how inexpensive it is to make small pieces of work and get your work out into the field and out into the world. And so we're going to go real quickly over the various types of zines you can make with materials you have at home, the different kinds of bindings, the different kinds of sizes you can use with basic papers, how you can design your own zines, your own photo zines, and have them commercially printed in small books like this one, this 40-pager I did, as well as just making little bits of work on a single sheet of paper that you cut a certain way, and then you can create a poster on one side. And these are all things you can use for leave behinds. You can drop them in the mail as mail art, send them to art directors or curators as little unique ways of reaching out. So we're going to study a wide spectrum of possibilities in zines. I'm going to show you all kinds of great work that's being done out there in hopes that you'll be inspired to try making some small books and zines yourself. So that's what we're going to do on October 15th. And I'm looking forward to that night.
Yay, Jeff.
We are too. That sounds great. So yes, I wanted to say thank you so much, David and Ashley. That was really fantastic and enlightening. And it was fun to see you. I haven't seen you both in a long time, probably since the Victoria Will book signing, I think. So, or maybe we've seen, oh no, Exposure, I'm sorry. So last year they were at Exposure. Hopefully they'll be back this year. And David and Ashley are both donating a piece of artwork to our fundraiser on October 24th. So be sure to tune in for that. And before that, we have Jeff Phillips on October 15th. So good night, everybody. Have a wonderful
Thank you very much.